I have another question, and once again, you'll get 60 seconds for your response. A year after the adoption of legislation to allow for medically assisted dying, many Canadians still face uneven access to the procedure, and debate remains over whether advanced consent should be available to patients who face diseases that include cognitive decline, such as dementia. As leader, would you seek to reopen the medically assisted dying law to address these concerns? Nikki Ashton, you're first.
So just a couple of days ago, we had an event in Port Alberni, and a number of folks raised their concerns with regards to the way this legislation is being implemented and the struggle that they're having with loved ones who are dealing with this right now. It's clear, as I heard from them, and we've heard from others across the country, that this legislation is not being applied the way perhaps the sentiment behind it. There's particular concern raised in terms of those who are living with onset and further developed dementia, and the way in which they are shut out from the opportunity to make that decision as well. Yes, it's important that we revisit this legislation. It was a groundbreaking legislation that many New Democrats, we as New Democrats, pushed for. We need to make sure that it's working for folks that need it. I'd also indicate that, as we've done many times in the House, we must also push for investment in palliative care to make sure that those that need the access and the support have that kind of support going forward in their final days.
Guy Caron, you are next.
Should it be reopened? Of course. I know the work that Mary Rankin has done on this file because he was in that committee along with Brigitte Sansouci. And the committee actually did amazing work because this was groundbreaking. And in the end, we had legislation that had nothing to do with what the committee heard. And the reason is simple. This bill that we had, even though it's groundbreaking because we had nothing before, it was otherwise forced upon the government by the Supreme Court. Well, it was a conservative bill. It's the exact same bill a conservative would have brought forth, which is trying to answer to what the Supreme Court is telling them, but trying to constrain it as much as possible so that we'll give little access as possible. And we're seeing in each province cases upon cases of people being refused the right, this right that was gained through this legislation. So do I want to reopen it? Of course I want to, because I want this bill to reflect the true meaning of what was discussed in committee.
Jagmeet Singh, you are next.
Thank you very much. So we all know that this issue is controversial, but we can all think about another service that was also considered controversial, but we were bold and we never backed down from it, a woman's right to choose. That's also a controversial issue, but we took a strong stance and said that that's something we absolutely need to support and that women should have that choice and have that right. Similarly, when it comes to medical assisted dying, it is controversial. There is different sensitivities, but we need to make it clear what the Supreme Court decision ruled is that people should have that right. And if we want to allow that right to exist, then we need to make sure that people have access to it. A right is meaningless if you have no access to it. A right is meaningless if you can't actually find ways to obtain that service. Then it's a meaningless right. So we absolutely need to reopen the legislation to ensure that this right, this access, that this service is actually accessible, that people can actually find a way to deal with it. But I also agree with what Nikki said around palliative care. We know that this is an extremely important area that we're not seeing enough funding and supports around.
Thank you very much.